Assalamualaikum and a very good evening I bid to everyone. Welcome to the forum today with the title The Hunger Games of War. My name is SAFIYYAH and I will be your moderator today. We have a few panelists who are joining us for this forum and they are not just ordinary people. Over here we have the representative from UN World Food Programme, Dr. Zulaikha and Miss Anna. Next, Miss Ani, a professional lawyer from Solidarity and Advocates Organization. And lastly, Ms. Sophia, the advisory council from the organization called Action Against Hunger. Before we start our forum, let me tell you a bit of what is happening to our world today. As we know, in where we live, our children are having hearty meals every day. Meanwhile, there are children from the other parts of the world that do not have any access to a proper meal for days and on end. In this day and age, there are still wars happening in certain countries, and it becomes one of the main reasons that the number of people who are malnourished keep rising. In northern Gaza, for example, it's been reported by UNICEF that 1 in 3 children under the age of 2 suffered from acute malnutrition, which then causes the death of those children. While in Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, some residents have opted to pick the leaf of the trees and boil them to eat and survive. So what's the issue? Is their suffering such a small matter to us? So let's begin with our first question, Dr. Zulaikha. From what we know earlier, war is one of the sources of the world hunger. May I know how exactly a war can be the reason of the increasing hunger?
Hi and a very good evening, I bet, to all my fellow friends. Thank you to our moderator, AUNI, for that question. I am Dr. Zulaikha, and United Nations World Food Programme Manager. And today I will be talking about what is actually causes hunger during the war. Firstly, hunger can be caused by limited movement that people face during war. Obviously, during the commotion, they can't go anywhere they want because there must be a turmoil, chaos in a certain time and place that they live in. Because of we know that they depend on food to meet their basic needs, but because of this chaos during war, cause to limit their needs, lead to hunger and even starvation for them. For example, when we look at Sudan, all the disrupted trade, markets, and cultivation activities, of course, affect all of the way for them to find food in order to eat. Moreover, this could affect exacerbate food insecurity and humanitarian needs, and this is why limited movement can cause to hunger for them during the war. That's my first point. Then let's move to the second point. Food blockage. Food blockage can mainly cause hunger during war. This is because food blockage allowing the passage of essentials such as food and water into the besieged area, which lead for them to not receive any sources of food to survive for at least a day. We can look, for instance, a genocide that continuously happening for almost a year between Israel and Palestine, where Israel has itself recognized the applicability of that rule to its control over the delivery of food and electricity to Gaza. They even publicly declared siege involves the international deprivation of food, water, and other essentials to the population of Gaza itself. If we read about the news on what's happening there, we could know that most of them died because of starvation during this period of time because this genocide, some children and then new citizen itself suffer from hunger and making them desperately looking for food at the dustbin, their conjugated water, making us feel touched when we see it. Then this is proof that proven that food blockage can cause hunger during this war. And then my last point, my last point is food supply confiscated. This is also another side of hunger that happened there. Food supply confiscated can cause hunger during war. And I will be taking an example in Congo. There, they have an issue about poverty, where high food prices also can be a problem for them to survive. And based on research, Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, stated that 26.4 million people are in emergency and crisis because of starvation. And DRC also has the largest number of food insecure people in the world, where acute food insecurity is also likely to remain high in certain places such as North Kira and Ituri. which cost directly related to the war in Ukraine too, simultaneously. So we can imagine with the problem that occurred there, poverty issue was is what I meant, added with their food supply is being confiscated, this could really block and plunder Congo food supply. With they deliberately destroying farms, livestock, and other civilian infrastructure can also cause food shortages that lead to hunger to people in Congo during this war. So I think that's all from me. I'm going to pass it back to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zulaikha, for sharing such valuable information. Now, let's move on to our next question. We all know a long-term hunger is bad for us. So, Miss Anna, how about the consequences of war and hunger towards the victims' daily life?
First and foremost, thank you for the moderator. Good day, everyone. So, as the moderator mentioned, the effects and the consequence of the hunger and war, I'll be talking about it. So, we will focus on the dire situation of this country we who are facing this problem right now. As Dr. Zuleika mentioned just now, in Sudan, where ongoing conflict threatens to trigger one of the worst famines in the world, as highlighted by the World Food Programme (WFP). So, my first point will be the destruction of agricultural and production. So the conflict in Sudan, for example, has displaced millions of people, forcing farmers to abandon their land and cease agricultural activities, leading to a significant decline in food production. Also, the key farming regions have been very devastated by fighting with crops destroyed and agricultural infrastructure damaged, making it nearly impossible to sustain local food supplies. So therefore, the WFP has warned that without immediate intervention, the collapse of the agricultural sector could result in very catastrophic food shortages as local production cannot meet the population needs. And moving on to my second point, which is interruption of food distribution. So this conflict has severely disrupted food distribution networks, making it very difficult for food to reach markets and consumers. Roads and transport systems are often targeted and become unsafe due to ongoing fighting. Blockades and checkpoints hinder the movement of food supplies, causing delays and spoilage. This results in reduced availability of food in local markets, exacerbating in hunger. So in many conflict zones, including Sudan itself, humanitarian organizations face very significant challenges in delivering food aid to those in need. The insecurity and logistical barriers limit the reach of aid efforts, leaving many people without reliable access to real food, proper food. And then my last point will be the economic collapse and food crisis. The conflict has severely impacted this country who is facing all hunger and war, especially Sudan's economy also, leading to a very skyrocketing food prices. Inflation and currency devaluation have made basic food items unaffordable for many families. Market disruptions and the destruction of trade routes have exacerbated the scarcity of food, driving prices higher and higher and placing additional strain on already impoverished communities. How devastating it is, right? So also, all these families are forced to spend a significant portion of their income on food, often at the expense of other necessities such as healthcare and education, further entrenching them in a cycle of poverty and hunger again and again. So, in conclusion, this conflict in about the hunger and war, the consequence of it is driving the nation towards a very severe famine, with agricultural destruction, interruption of food distribution, and economic collapse as key contributing factors. This situation demands an urgent international attention and action to prevent a very humanitarian catastrophe. It is imperative to support diplomatic efforts to end the conflict, ensure the safe delivery of humanitarian aid, and rebuild the country's agricultural infrastructure, even though it may take a while. So yeah, thank you for your attention to this pressing issue, and I will pass it back to the moderator to continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Anna. That was unfortunate to hear that all of that happened in our world. There is one thing I'm curious about. Some governments are using the technique of starving the civilians from the other side. civilians from the other side and purpose to win the war. Since Miss Anis is an expert about law, can you share your thoughts about this?
Thank you, Miss Auni. So I am Miss Anis. There is some country that use starvation to win a war. So let me say this is starvation as a method of warfare is prohibited. So let me prove to you by exposing some laws. So we can go for the first law or the first convention is called Geneva Convention of 12 August 1949. We can see here from the Rule 54 that is titled Starvation as a Method of Warfare. So we can see here Article 54. The first point in the document is actually starvation of civilians as a method of warfare is prohibited. Clearly, that it was stated there. It is prohibited. It is prohibited to attack, destroy, remove, or render useless objects indispensable to the survival of the civilian population, such as foodstuffs, agricultural areas for the production of foodstuffs, crops, livestock, drinking water installation and supplies, and irrigation works, and any kind of things that is related to that. So we can see here that if a country or some countries intended to destroy or remove the foodstuff to attain the survival of the civilian population, it is called starvation. And pretty much, as I stated, it is prohibited. So this is not a method to win a war. The second one, we can see in the according to the 1948 Genocide Convention, the deliberate starvation of an ethnic group is prohibited by the 1948 Genocide Convention, in which genocide is taken to the mean of the intentional annihilation in whole or in part of an ethnic group by means of certain acts enumerated in Article 2. So, in the document of the Genocide Convention in 1948, in the Article 2, in the third point, it's deliberately inflicting on the group condition of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. We can see there that starvation is actually an act to attain or affect the group's condition of life by starve them to death. So we can see here that starvation is clearly actually prohibited by Genocide Convention in 1948. Okay, because you inflict the status of the health of the civilians by starving them to death. So that is my second proof. My last proof is 1990 report of the Commission on the Responsibility of the War and on their punishment. We all know that German Empire actually started any war, and especially World War II. So, in the report of the 1990 report of the Commission on the Responsibility of the War and their punishment, we can see here that German Empire actually used deliberate starvation of civilians, and they have used it. They use it on the civilians before and previous. And with this document, actually, it stated that it's pretty much prohibited and it's actually a wrong method to win a war. So by using these three laws that I stated, it is very much prohibited to use starvation as a method of warfare. So we can see clearly that it is very much prohibited. Okay, so I will pass it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Anis. That was one helpful explanation. Now, everyone knows about law when it comes to war, but now I'm sure most of us have learned about it. Now, before we end our forum, there is one last question I would like to ask. Miss Sophia, since you are from an aid organization that has been fighting world hunger, how do you think we can do to help those victims?
All right, thank you very much for the question, Miss Auni, our moderator. Right, so as a whole on this issue, there are a lot of initiatives that have been taken actually and that have proven to be effective. It may take a long time, but it is still it still works. So one of the I would say the initiatives is called the Rapid Response and Emergency Food Assistance. So by the name itself is actually quite self-explanatory. So it basically an organization will provide emergency food aid at a fast rate. So usually during a time of crisis, or when disaster strikes or conflicts even, the first thing that will finish up is actually our food. So and the number one thing for humans to survive is food. So if you don't have food, your chance of survival is very, very low. Now, the emergency food assistant program or assistance provides the immediate relief to those in need, those who are in conflicts, and this aid ensures them from that they do not suffer from hunger, especially before long-term solutions can be implemented. So this is a more of a short-term solution. So one prominent example is that by the World Food Programme by from our fellow panelists, Miss Anna and Dr. Zulaikha. So they have one program in Yemen specifically. So the WFP brings about the delivering of food aid to the Yemenis there, to the population there that are affected by the ongoing conflict. So what they do is that they provide a life-saving food supply as well as nutritional support to prevent the people there from famine and malnutrition. So another organization that does this as well is called the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, specifically in Near East, in Gaza and Syria. So they help the Palestine refugees and they offer emergency food assistance during in these conflict zones. So basically, what they're doing is that they're ensuring that the vulnerable populations receive essential nutrition so that they can still survive. So moving on, we also actually this correlates with the speaker before me as well. Sorry, two speakers before me, Miss Anna. So we're talking about the strengthening of food system as well as infrastructure. Okay, so this initiative is actually more of a long-term initiative and it's more catered towards food security. So it involves improving the country's agricultural practices, so including field work and all lah. So they're basically building strong supply chains, enhancing storage capacity, as well as strengthening the distribution networks in the country and outside the country. So one of the organization called Food and Agriculture Organization (FAO). So they also work actively in South Sudan, as the previous panelists have mentioned. And what they're doing there is basically to strengthen and build a concrete base for the country's food system. So how they do this is by providing training to the locals, tools, and even seeds to the farmers to help increase their agricultural sustainability and productivity there. So another, there's an NGO there as well that plays a big factor in conflict-affected regions called Mercy Corps, and they work to restore and improve the infrastructure there. So how they do that is actually they try to build back the marketplace so that the locals are able to produce and access their food even during conflicts. Okay, so the last one that I'm about to talk about is actually quite well known online as well. It's called the cash transfer programs. So this initiative is actually, I believe, one of the most flexible, most well known, as well as very empowering. So what they do here basically is you can provide cash or you can donate some money to the affected individuals or families. So this allows them a bit of pocket money so that they can purchase whatever they need. So like food, medicine, or other essentials that are available. Times like these times like these or during conflicts, prices for everything goes very high up, and sadly, there's not much money. So with giving this pocket money, this cash transfer program, they are able to combat the high levels of things. high level prices of things. So a notable example is one in Syria as well. It's called the Cash for Work program. So this initiative, they don't only just provide cash assistance, but they also create job opportunities. So how do they do this? So basically, they involve people in community projects. So indirectly, they're also rebuilding their infrastructure, and they're creating a concrete base for them to grow back after the conflict. So one more is the WFP's assistance program in Gaza. So they are actually a quite a big example as well by distributing cash to the families so that they can buy food locally. And when they buy food locally, it actually supports the local economy. So it continues for people to have access to diverse food options. And one more for our viewers as well. A big part is that we, to anyone who owns a mobile phone, so pretty much everyone, you have a platform to spread awareness. And to solve an issue, the first step is you have to be aware of it. Then the next step of being aware, you have to understand what the issue is. So when a lot of people can band together, that's when you can raise up an issue, and that's when you can finally take action on a global scale. Don't think I have any much more to say on this, so I'll pass it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Miss Sophia, for the great suggestions. Now we are at the end of our forum today, and before that, let's recap the key points discussed by our panelists. We have learned a few of how a war can cause hunger to some people. That includes food blockage and the confiscated food supplies, and all of that has affected the war victims both mentally and physically, which then also impact their economic status and employment. And that's why using starvation of civilians as a technique to win a war is a criminal act, as has been explained by Ms. Anis, who comes with evidence from humanitarian law. Lastly, this issue can be stopped or at least lessened by the help of many organizations and from all of us through donation and spreading awareness through social media. As humans, it is important for us to spread awareness about this matter to the world to stop these inhuman acts towards the innocents. Let's not forget that those victims have a right to live just like us. With this, I will end this forum here. Thank you again to our honored guests for joining us as panelists today. Have a wonderful evening.